And now to get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers, our dynamic duo. We have Dr. Christina Bars is a distinguished Chief Transformation Officer at Problem Solutions with a robust career in organizational development, AI integration, and change management. Her expertise extend to facilitating workshops for measurable, sustainable results. And then Mike Pino is a seasoned leader with over 25 years of experience driving innovation at the intersection of strategy, technology, and talent development. He has held pivotal roles, including global learning leader at Cognizant and a partner at PwC Future of Work Practice, where he shaped transformative solutions for organizational worldwide. And with that, take it away, guys.
Thanks so much, Liz.
Thank you so much. We're really thrilled to be here. Let me share my screen. Good? Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with you today to explore how we can use AI, not just as a buzzword, but as a strategic tool in learning and development. And I'm Christina Bars, as Liz introduced, and I'm here with my colleague, Mike Pino. And we hope that you'll find this session interactive, practical, and tailored to strategic L&D leaders navigating that whole AI-powered workforce transformation. Here's what we're going to cover today. We'll explore how AI is shaping L&D, examine strategic use cases, and walk through problem-solving framework to help you identify where AI can drive impact and within your organization and even within your role. You'll have some quiet time at points to reflect. We have a worksheet that we're going to work together on to help us go through a three-layered framework in identifying opportunities that blueprint for AI in strategic L&D. So I think the Zoom poll came up. Yes, okay. So just to give us a understanding of what your confidence level is, because Mike and my goal today is to raise that confidence level. And so please take a little bit of time to go through the comments. So low is 1, high is 5. 5 is like, I can teach this stuff like Mike and Christina. 1 is AI, I'm not sure. So please take that time. Now, while you're doing that, Mike is going to be on the chat. He'll be manning the chat. He'll be answering questions and interjecting as we go forward. So the next thing we'll do is while you're filling that out, I'm going to explain, why AI and LD matters now. So it's anchoring in the why. Executives are no longer asking, why AI? They're asking when AI. And they know about like 79%, as you can see here on the screen, know that it is impacting the way they do business. Even 60% of organizations are currently using Gen AI in HR and L&D. So in the chat, we have a lot of information right here, but in the chat, if you would like to learn more, we placed together, because Mike and I are educators at heart, we created a resource document that has links to the articles, the videos, and the blogs that informed these statistics on the screen. So we want to make sure that it's everything that's here for you, but you're also able to take that and move forward. Mike, do you want to add a little bit while we're waiting for people to complete the poll?
Well, just a couple of things here, so I have some friends that have actually been writing me notes. John Scher actually sent me a quick note saying he's on the call today. So hi to all the people I've met before and that have actually really quickly, some of the things that are actually changing. And as you notice, some of these documents, even though they were released in December of 2023, the data on them, as we've actually seen things that have been coming out in the last few weeks, are even higher, and it's changing very fast. Also, the other thing that's been really hard to keep up with is how much the models are changing and how much you can do now. So, for instance, just this past week, I believe it was last Tuesday, Microsoft released the ability inside Copilot, for instance, to be able to build agents and connect them to teams and do other kinds of stuff. And it's changing that fast that it's impossible for many of us to keep up. So I don't think that many of the folks, I would be surprised if a lot of the kinds of comments that come in on the confidence level, I'm sure people are familiar with this, but I'm certain that people are also confident that I'm confident that people are actually a little bit like, how do I keep up with it feels like a deluge.
Thank you, Mike. I lost my mouse. Now I got it back. Excellent. So let's talk about some strategic use cases while we're waiting for the poll results. So, in making this tangible, there are three common high impact ways that AI can affect L&D and L&D delivery. So we have three use cases here, one from a different industry. So for logistics, AI for skill gap discovery and role readiness. It's using AI, and Mike knows that we've developed this ourselves to analyze job descriptions, performance data, and learning history to help map out gaps and create targeted upskilling plans, especially now as we're becoming augmented enterprises and AI is now in the flow of work. Our job descriptions, our expectations are changing drastically. So utilizing AI to help us see this brave new world. A second use case is personalized leadership development. And I think this is like the butterfly that we all chase in the field of L&D, right? We always want to have that personalized experience. And how can we do that? And we've in the past, both Mike and I have been in learning and development for a significant amount of time, that we've seen different LMSs, LXs to be able to help us be able to do that. But AI now gives us the opportunity to have mentors that can be speaking right with our clients, be able to help us curate micro learning playlists, interact in our productivity tools, sending an email, having a conversation, those things that actually bring it even to more of a personalized experience, mimicking even the way you talk and the way that you express yourself. Now, before I go, and that was a financial institution that we're working with. Now, I'm going to pause because we have the ratings up here. And Mike, what do you think?
I am not surprised by what I'm seeing here. That we're actually in the first comment about understanding, having some familiarity. That sort of makes sense. Identifying opportunities at about half the folks in here. What's kind of interesting to me is the third question is linking things to measurable business outcomes. So we'll probably spend a little bit more time today, Christina, just to really focus a little bit more
Yeah.
on how to actually think a little bit differently about talking about L&D, because this is going to become really more important, even more so important as we augment human performance inside companies. The ability to show how learning and work and performance integrate is going to be really important for us. So that's what I see with that. On the fourth question, it's the opposite side. They understand how to implement it at work. That's really good. So I think that I think it's about where I thought we'd be, and that we should probably spend a little bit more time focusing on use cases and how to actually speak to the business a little differently.
Fantastic. And we actually have, as we go through this, on our strategic project that we're going to do, our sprint. And then afterwards, we do talk about how to do ROI and how to implement that. So we'll unpack that further. And I'd love to have your feedback and your guidance on that, Mike, because we know that if you can connect it to the bottom line, people will see L&D as a strategic partner, not as a cost center. So the
Totally agree.
totally right. The third use case is on-demand performance support at scale. So again, being able to answer real-time questions, summarize standard operating procedures, and simulate customer conversations, as this was for a national retailer. Now, the thing is, it's really important is not only is the teaching part, there's like two sides to this. There's the teaching, there's the user experience, but the beauty of AI now is giving you things in real time. So on the back end, you're actually able to see what SOPs are they opening? What part of the SOP are they opening? Is there something that's unclear? What are those real-time questions? What is the types of questions that people are asking so that we're able to, again, be as learning development, make changes and augment your delivery, change the way you do business, because if your standard operating procedures are written in a manner that people do not understand, now you're affecting the business and compliance. So being able to have that real-time data is incredibly powerful. And then also having the ability to have those conversations, which actually that simulation, we saw that also in the personal leadership development. So those are three use cases that we've seen AI make tremendous changes and impact. But the red thread that runs through all of this is data. Data
Exactly.
people said data was king a long time ago. I don't know, Mike, when was that? Like data. It's now not just king, it's,
A lot of people have actually said it was Deming. They claimed that Deming said it in 51. In God we trust, all others must bring data. And since Deming is actually, one of the big names in business schools, it's definitely worth noting.
So with that said, we want your opinion. Yes, we just shared 3 different use cases. And we'd like, in your opinion, in your organization, what's the one opportunity that you're seeing? There's content development, skills assessment, performance support, and measurement and ROI. And yeah, as Deming goes, so does the rest of the world, right? They have the Deming Award in Japan, right? As we
Exactly.
have, right?
Yep. Well, that's where we get lean, and that's how agile comes out of lean. And a lot of these concepts are actually, they start first from how do you actually improve efficiency and process. And I think we're actually seeing in some of the poll results that are actually starting to come back, um, that that there is a recognition that we need to do some stuff to create capacity inside the organization in the L&D team, but there's also a need to create some new capabilities that haven't existed inside the L&D team. So I think that we're seeing some interesting results in this poll. I'm looking forward to seeing the finals. Yeah,
Oh,
content
fantastic.
development's is a capacity, but now you start to see a little bit move on the performance support, which is a spot that's been challenging. Skills assessment is a newer one and a harder one to get fast, and the measurement has always been a bugaboo. I've been doing this for a long time, and that's been one that we've talked about for more than 2 decades.
So we've dropped kind of, is there some people would like to share um, what, why that area? So, Mike and I can elucidate on what you're sharing, what you've all added for the poll, but in the chat, Mike, are we seeing anyone that, on their, why they chose that area? Because we'd love to hear from our participants, maybe one or two, regarding, how to get this conversation started.
Not yet, not but I'm sure that people will start typing in as soon as that comes in. Christina, if you want to move forward, I'll integrate some of these.
Fantastic.
Interrupt you.
Thank you. So far we've talked about, what's moving in the industry. We've talked about what the challenges are in the industry and even bringing it home to what's for us. But let's think about, like, how do we lead with intention? And we put together a framework and a worksheet, and the worksheet will be uploaded shortly, on 3 layers of strategic AI problem solving. Here's another lean Six Sigma phrase, like, peeling back the onion, right?
Yeah,
So here we have the 3 layers. I always like that, peeling back the onion, because it made me cry, because when you cut onions, you cry. And sometimes process improvement is a little bit emotional. So let's talk about the first one, is
okay.
framing.
Before we do, I'm gonna bring in some of the content
Oh,
concepts
thank you.
that
Please
people have
do.
shared. Yeah, so there's a lot of people that have actually shared stuff about developing content and that being a really critical thing. Drafting content, assessing developing assessment questions, determining what's really important, what's critical. But one of the things that we probably need to circle back on, there was a question in there. Hey, how can you give an example of assessing skills with AI? So I will put a pin in that, Christina, and I'll come back to
Mhm.
that when it comes time for us to get into that. But these are some of the things that are coming in that people as they're doing this, they're recognizing that there are ways that I can do things faster with my job. So I'm getting efficiency gains. I'm getting some capacity. Uh, but I think the people, what I'm seeing here is a lot of really focusing on capacity with a little bit of effectiveness. So they're thinking about ways to actually improve how they're doing things. So this is a good place for us to dive into. Okay, let's actually go deeper into improving things.
Fantastic. And we just want to share that the way we designed this workshop, we designed it with like about 50 minutes of interaction and slide so that we could have enough time to have a panel discussion. So take those questions that Mike is collecting and have have a discussion, because that's the magic of the webinar, right? Is those discussions. So thank you. So let's see. The first one was framing the opportunity. So that's like the strategy level. That's the high level. That's starting with clarity before you start with tech. A lot of times we dive into having the solution ahead of ourselves and say, well, we need to use AI. Where could we use it without thinking about what does it fit in the bigger picture? So, figuring out what is the challenge that you have? What is the business challenge you have? Because if you can measure the business challenge, you can measure the result or the impact of your intervention. Understanding your root cause. Is it, for example, in healthcare, they're having a problem with people doing hand washing. They wanted to create a new hand washing education piece. But as we unpacked it, it wasn't the education that was an issue. So really making sure that you're picking the right things for the right reasons. And then also understanding who your audience is and your stakeholders. So that's your framing of your opportunity, the challenge, the cause, and the impact of the people. Now let's go into the exploring the possibility, which is now your solution. Now we're getting into solutions, and this is when we bring AI in. And this is where the curiosity piece is. And you're going to hear Mike talk a lot about curiosity, because that's really key to being successful. And it's what is your outcome, your desired outcome? And be specific. What is the current approach? How are you doing it today? And sometimes not doing something is still doing something, right? And then the opportunity for how do you see AI implemented into this process? And sometimes we continue to work in these like parameters of, well, I know it could be a chatbot. I know it can correct. I know it can generate this. But there's so many other things that AI can do. So dream big, because even the way of generating and creating AI solutions is becoming powered by AI, right? With this cursor software, where if you don't know Python, you go in, you type in, and it generates the code. Yes, I too can be a developer. And it's fantastic. I
Christina,
know.
it'll write the first draft. As a 20-year veteran of software development, what I'll say is it does a pretty good job of making working code, but you do need to have a little bit of judgment. This is one of those things that is a really important kind of distinction we should also make sure you all understand, is that where the models are still a little bit limited is understanding when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. Because, and this is true in life, I mean, sometimes an answer is correct generally, but in this specific context, it's not correct. And that's where you're going to find that an AI response may not actually be exactly what you're expecting. But that
Yeah.
said, you've built some cool things in the past for some of our clients. So, I mean, this might be a place to actually share one of those things about solving a problem differently that people might not think about. So, if you want to, I don't think this is bragging or showing off, but I do think it's actually
Oh.
helpful to help people think differently.
Well, first of all, I'm going to draft off of the computers in the group, humans in the loop. That's what you were talking about, which is, right, I can generate code, but I don't know enough to know if the code is clear. Now, but if I'm generating something like we were talking about, like even creating agents to help with career coaching, we created a career coaching agent. I could have and this is why I love generative AI, because it's incredibly full of grace and forgiving. You put in what you're looking for, it generates it back. You're the human, you assess it. And I tell this to all my MBA students, you assess what comes out. And then the great thing is it's a dialogue. That's where it's different than a search engine. You get something and then you can have a conversation and you can ask for clarity. Like, is this really a model or is this a framework? Is this what I'm looking for? And I love how it comes back. At least I'm very polite, because when the robots take over the world, I want them to say, well, the little Greek woman in middle of main pasture, she was really lovely. Don't worry about her. But the idea is when you're having when you're having this guy, poor Mike. We work every day together, and this is what he has to deal with. But for example, one of the agents that we created, one of the agents was that, to be able to help people be able to position themselves for new roles. This organization was changing and morphing, and the positions were changing, and people have been in the roles for 17 years. They didn't know how to do transitional skills or transferable skills. So we created an agent that would coach them through. They would upload the job description, upload their resume. It would walk through their resume. It would tell them what matched, what didn't match, what they needed to do, how they have to organize their resume, what ATS words. Oh, do you want to write a LinkedIn to the recruiter? Here's what your LinkedIn is. Here's your pitch for would you like to practice having that interview? It is so powerful today, because I can give that to a student. I can give that to someone that I'm coaching and say, try this. And then the humans in the loop have that conversation with them. What did you expect? What did you think? And have that dialogue. Mike?
Yeah, the other thing I just sort of say, there's been a lot of really interesting comments in the webinar chat, and I've been typing back and forth with folks, and there have been a few questions that have been asked in the Q&A. Please keep them coming. And the only thing I'd sort of say is this three-step framework is probably one of the most important things that you can learn. It's a really useful framework. It's actually can be applied in a lot of different contexts, but really you start by actually understanding, defining the problem and framing the opportunity, and really moving into, before you solve the problem, understand what are the places that are going to make the biggest difference. And this is where a lot of people fall down, because this is where the measurement should be placed. And how do you know that things are going right is you should be looking at measurements here. And that's really, before you actually define a solution, define the measurement, then connect the solution to the measurement. But the last one is the most important thing. And this is a place that, in the future, learning professionals focused on performance, as well as HR professionals in general, need to spend a lot more time thinking about how are we responsible and how do we help the organization act responsibly. And there are some places where you really play a key and pivotal role here. So I think we should jump in and dive into the next slide, because I do think that some of the things that you cover, really this will be a good kind of conversation starter for us.
Thank you. And yeah, this is so with that said, because like Mike says, being good stewards, quite often L&D are the good stewards of an organization. We see things before others do and see the needs. So in the chat, Liz has probably uploaded the PDF of the worksheet. It's a fillable PDF, and walks you through the 3-layer model. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to work on this in silence. And that means that Mike and I won't talk. So they have silence. It's too bad we don't have music that could play in the background. So working your way through frame, explore, possibility, and act responsibly. And then at 5 minutes, we're going to open up the dialogue to the room and have people doing share. Because I think
Mustafa, the link is actually in the webinar chat. So look inside the chat, just scroll a little bit up. You should see the a 3.64 megabyte size PDF that was just uploaded by Liz Spate.
Is it, are we, I just want to make sure that they have it so we don't
I
start.
I believe people are already starting to download. I can see some action here, so a lot of people are in there.
Okay, so we'll give them 5 minutes to be able to do, and there's, start wherever in the thing, though you really should start at the beginning and where your most energy is. And this is just for you. There's no wrong answers. Any other guidance, Mike, before we set them off into their.
No, you can use this. Please feel free to use this in your own practice and business, and this is a gift to you. And while they're filling this out, remember this is being recorded, so there are some people are going to be watching this that aren't here live, and we're sorry you couldn't be part of this session live, but it's really important to think about the fact that on the day that this was recorded, the 23rd of April, by the time you might watch this a few days later, we'll probably have another LLM model or some other change has actually just, really kind of shifted some of the capabilities or possibilities. But that doesn't change the approach and the way that you solve problems. And so really what's critical here is to really start by starting and break a problem down and work on it. Think systematically, think big, and then move as quickly as possible. You can't solve all the problems, but solving some of them immediately and helping the business see value. These are the two critical points that will make you invaluable. And you know, I know a lot of people. There's a recent data report that just came out this morning, Christina, a Gallup poll that on 2025, less than 51% of people feel that this is a good time globally to look for a new job. And so there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of worry about where things are. But if you actually help add value, if you help improve how the company is doing, it changes how you're seen inside the company. I can tell you that it's been part of what has made a lot of people successful over the years since I've coached and done executive coaching. It's been one of the things I've seen a lot of success that people have had. We're about a minute away, Christina. Do you have any last thoughts before we ask people to start sharing some comments?
Oh, you have a minute away? I have 3 minutes away.
I can't count.
Well,
we'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
There you go. Yeah, I'll go to the next slide. No pressure, just so that people know what the next step is. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah, I would say, Mike, we can help them wrap it up and wherever they're at, and let's bring some of that insight that people have into this virtual room. Drop a takeaway in the chat. What challenge were you reflecting on?
We've had a couple people struggling to get it to download. So if you actually do have problems downloading it, you should be able to click on it and download. But your computer limitations may be set by a policy inside your company. You may not actually be able to download things inside Zoom. That may be a
Oh.
security policy. So if that's the case, we're very sorry that you can't get it. We will make sure that on the website you'll be able to download it there. We'll cover the concepts, so you'll be able to see these concepts, and we're sorry that you're not able to download it. So we saw a few people with that challenge. One of the things that the question that came up, Christina, before we jump in is measuring application, measuring impact on learning and what to do. Yeah, and Adam, that's a great point. You have to actually, you can't wait for the download screen. In some Microsoft Windows cases, you'll miss the download screen. It will disappear quickly. So it is a speed thing for some people. But the question that came in that I answered just before was about measuring impact on learning and thinking about ways that AI could actually help, not just measure understanding, right? So we had the transfer of knowledge, but being able to show that someone has proficiency and or readiness to apply that knowledge. And that's actually been an interesting challenge for a lot of application and measurement applications. There's a lot of really funny comments. Subhajit actually made a good tongue-in-cheek joke. Yeah, use AI to count. I know, I didn't do it. Oh well. So I think we're good at this point. I think we're at the 5-minute mark. Let's actually jump into some of the responses. One of the things that came in that I see in the chat is that hiring and retention with upskilling seems to be a real problem at one person's position. And looking how the AI can help us be successful in that space. How can we improve hiring and retention on one case or upskilling in another case? And I know that Christina, you've actually done some work on improving hiring, and you may want to share some of that. That may be a good way for us to sort of do it. But there's a couple of other really interesting things that are coming in. There's some few people have shared to me privately that we are unable to move beyond, just basic kind of simple learning because we can't produce it fast enough. And if we could go faster, that would actually help us. So there's some real interesting things that are coming in that people are actually, that they're struggling with. But upskilling seems to be probably number one, and hiring and retention seems to be number two, based on what I'm seeing come out.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that somebody had, I think Adam talked about, how to, we're limited to Adobe, limited by what software that you have. And also, I think one of the things that I know we don't talk about it here, but I'm going to bring it up is that L&D should be at the table for governance. So for AI governance, they should, or HR should be with a heavy hand in L&D, because as Mike knows, a couple of our clients that we've worked with, we've actually had to help them create their governance protocols for bringing AI into their organization. And even then, when utilizing AI, what especially like we had an assessment that we were helping with, and they were saving psychometric data. So we had to help them understand what policies and procedures that you had to follow because you were utilizing AI and drafting that data. So it is a brave new world. And it's important that L&D and HR are part of those governance conversations. It sounds like it should be tech, but actually HR should be at the table with those. Now, as for ideas for the when we've had like recruiting and retention, for recruiting, we've created internally in our organization, we created an agent that helped go through the resume, download the resumes from our HIRS through an API, and then be able to take the data from the job description and do the first screening, then the second screening, and then the third screen. We built it so that it would help parse down to then you have a slate. And that's something that used to take an enormous amount of time, but now we're able to run it, generate a report that then has the humans in the loop where the human can look through it and go, wait a minute, this one doesn't look right. Go back through. But instead of having to assess over, I think we had one point we had 400 applications for a particular role. Instead of going through all 400, we were able to really narrow down to like the top 20, then get down to the top 5 for interview slate. And another one we did was another one we have is for assessing your job descriptions, comparing to like with the new executive order that just came through. How are your job descriptions written? Are they written in alignment to the new executive order regarding merit-based performance? What does your EEOC statement say at the end? How are your job descriptions being supporting that? Are they because that an executive order versus a law, how do you stay compliant in both ways? So we use that to help us go through our job descriptions and then our interview questions. Any type of exercise we wanted were generated by that particular agent as well.
So there've been a lot of
Thoughts,
really
Mike?
good comments, and one of the things I just sort of would add to this that that I've seen in some of the private emails that were sent or chats that were sent to me were just that as you really think about solving the business problems, one of the key areas that you really need to be a lot more comfortable with is thinking about what someone does with knowledge. And it's been a real challenge for us in learning because we go so fast that we're often just, do they know do they know what this means? Do they know what that means? And knowledge is good, but knowledge, the old expression that we often banter about is L&D professionals, knowing isn't doing. And the real challenge is understanding how to get some of those doing kinds of things. But you'd be surprised having people basically come in to respond to an interaction and being able to measure how they're working through it, or have them explain what they would do first and why they would do it, in creating the sort of the linear or logical, why would you think this, why would you think that, and having that actually be spelled out, and having people articulate that, having an agent then discern what level of awareness and being able to create a schema to measure that. You'd be surprised just having a basic key like that has a huge impact, because the business will actually, if you're showing them that they're able to do some of these things, and they see that you're actually are making a decent effort, you'd be surprised how much actually in other parts of the business are actually doing things with measurements just like that. In learning, we have this a lot of times, a lot of us have been trained in really deep psychometric data, and we understand how to really understand how to dig deeper into building appropriate causal relationships between data points. But in some cases, using the Anglo-American jurisprudence measure, when you're in a capital case, you need to prove beyond all reasonable doubt. That's an appropriate place to use those causal relationships. But in most business, it's just a preponderance of evidence is the amount, the threshold that you need to actually do. Would a reasonable person come to the conclusion after looking at what we just shared that they can do it? Because most business people will accept that level of accuracy, the preponderance of evidence. And so this is one of the things that, as we move further into this space, one of the changes we have to do as professionals is come to accept how to help communicate that preponderance of evidence versus beyond all reasonable doubt.
And that's where, and for example, those agents that I talked to, our solutions, they were all tied to business metrics. Like, for example, the recruiting one or talent acquisition one was tied to time to fill. And the one about that we use to help coach people on their careers was tied to retention. So, and then also other tools, but the other measures, but those were some of the tools that we were measuring against things that the organization already was noticing. Now, I did notice that Melissa,
It's a
was
good
my
one. You
feedback.
you want to jump on that one? This is a good one
Yeah,
to cover.
he knows that this is a project I've been working on. So you're right, HR policies, because in creating an HR agent, we don't, we're a scrappy little company and we don't have a full HR, so we are augmented and we created HR agents to help us with our work. And one of them is those SOPs, is teaching your agent what SOPs you already have, understanding what data you need to upload, and having the right prompts. But we were able to create that so that we were able to generate and update all of our SOPs, because our SOPs were, I think, we had been merged. So we had SOPs from a different client, a different parent company. Now we owned, and we also were different in our pursuit. We're an AI first organization. So going through and rewriting, first we did it as we took how I did it was I took the whole list of um, I wrote my prompt, but then all the list of the ones I had, asked AI to assess it and say, what am I missing, considering the current, where we're at, and aligning it to certain data sources. It came back. It told me what I was missing, told me what I needed to have. And then we systematically went through each one of, and Mike knows this because is systematically each one of the policies we went through, we restructured them differently. We were able to have cross collaboration, because sometimes you do one policy and it's like in its own little world and silo, but we were able to just do this cross generation. So you could use your managers, you could create and generate something for them to react to, or you could create an agent that could interview them for their question, for what they were looking for, and then based on that interview be able to generate that policy, or the first draft of the policy, because remember, it's humans in the loop.
And one other way to actually approach this, Melissa, is that I'm sure that you may have a video of someone teaching someone for an onboarding purpose, or if you don't have someone actually record it for onboarding, just do the process and record yourself explaining the process and applying it, and then run the agent through it and create an SOP from the actual transcript. So there are lots of different ways. You just have to think slightly differently about how to do these kinds of things. And that won't reduce the need for a SME to come in to double check, but a SME double checking something that's 90% right versus a SME coming in to write 100% is going to take a lot less time, and it's going to be a lot faster, and it's going to be you're going to get a lot more SMEs that will be happy to review a document to make sure it's accurate than to write a document to make sure it's accurate. So those are two different concepts, Melissa, that you might want to consider. Shall we jump forward?
Yes. So talking and pulling, like we were saying about ROI, from
Yep.
learning metrics to business value. So there's three, we have the rule of three today. First is define the R. What's the return? What are you looking to impact? So beyond L&D, is it time to productivity, reduction in turnover, retention, revenue influenced by upskilling? Then the second part is, how would you use AI to do the heavy lifting? Now, I know this sounds very much like the framework. It's built that way. So the idea is, let the AI do the heavy lifting. Again, this is where you're going to save the money and the time and the resources. The idea is like AI can analyze patterns between training and performance outcomes. It can pull real time from your HRS, your LMS, and your CRM. All those two that usually don't work nicely together, but AI can help you do that, and also simulate ROI scenarios for business cases. Mike keeps saying, what are you making? What decisions are you making? How do you know which way you want to go? You can have AI run simulations to let you know where the impact would be. And then again, tie everything back to business metrics, shifting from did they learn to did performance improve? Did we reduce costs or risk? Did we accelerate our business goals? Mike, take it away.
Just the only thing I'd add on to that, one additional feature here that will probably be more and more important as L&D professionals, and you should probably think a little bit, investing a little bit more time in, is understanding decision quality. Decision quality is actually a way to measure how people make decisions. Now, as you can imagine, as things accelerate, we're now going to need more and more judgment, more and more wisdom. We're going to need to be able to measure how people are making decisions. And if you start to also integrate decision quality as something that people practice when they're going through what they're learning, and you're making that something that's more visible to people, it will become an incredibly important thing longer term in leadership development and executive development. It's already happening, and I can see a lot more. If you actually also think about decision quality when you frame the metrics to do here, you could literally ask your AI LLM using the parameters of decision quality, what should I be measuring here in order to help a business leader make a reasonable, understand reasonably well that someone can do what they, after completing a course, that they can do this. And literally having it start to frame that out in terms of decision quality might be another way to think about it. And we have some really great comments coming in the webinar chat. There's a really great point in there that I believe it was Adam that actually came up with fine tuning. And there was a point that that Coney had about, the invisible R's, and Moses had some interesting points on some of the heavy lifting things. Running simulations, for instance, is the question that Moses asked. And I'm going to bring that up because let AI do the heavy lifting. What does it really mean to simulate an ROI scenario for a business case? You literally would take that and you can import that as a prompt into an LLM. A prompt is a lot different than a search query. And you can have in Microsoft Copilot, I think it's 10,000 tokens is the actual field, which is approximately 9,500 words. If you write a prompt that's 9,500 words, bravo on you. Well done. You don't need to write that much. That's more than 50 pages. But if you write 5 pages or even one paragraph, and you start to actually frame it and talk about, here are the things that really matter for this kind of business. This is the industry that we're in. People that are doing this kind of work need to be able to do this. I'm trying to actually measure, ROI. What are the things I need to be looking at? So Moses, these would be the ways I would actually reflect that back. How to do scenarios inside an LLM. Start first by starting inside the prompt. Use the prompt to help you actually come back with an answer. Ask the AI to help you define a prompt on how to actually write the response to get the kinds of things you want to measure. So you would basically say something like, this is the problem I'm trying to solve. Here's what I actually am trying to accomplish. This is what the people need to be able to do. This is what we're training them on. Help me write the prompt that helps me understand what I need to measure. And then when you get the prompt back, write the prompt in. So put the prompt into the and do a chain of thought where you basically put the prompt in and see what comes back. So there's a lot of really great stuff coming in here, Christine. I don't know if you want to pick on anything else that's coming in the chat.
What I think I'm going to do, because this is really great stuff, and we did promise that we were going to have the time to have that. So I am taking an executive decision.
All right.
There's a real world case study that's in this deck, and I'm going to tell you, trust us, because instead of me just reiterating this case study, you're going to get the slides anyway. So I'm just going to, organization had an issue, they quantified it, they came up with a solution that was phased. And they utilized AI in the different phases to be able to address the situation. And then they were able to quantify and impact the organization's business metrics. The key executive insight was we stopped asking, did they complete the training? And started asking, did the training reduce risk and accelerate readiness? AI helps us answer that, because I'm seeing some really great stuff in here that I think that would be more timely for people to answer. So just as a recap, what we now know, we explored how L&D strategies powered by AI can drive measurable business outcomes and workforce transformation. Key takeaways, the change is now. AI is already in L&D. We're in the middle of change. We're not like the change is coming. We're in it. We're running the tsunami. We got our you know, Hawaiian shirts on and we're going for it. AI empowers L&D to move beyond completions and to make that impact. And you have a framework, that 3-layer strategic model, as well as the conversation we did started to unpack on the return on investment. And I'm going to stop here and have us come back. Oh yeah, and here's and just thank you and resources. Just again, downloadable template, which I know all that information Liz and Jennifer have, so they'll be able to make sure that you get that. And the webinar recording link, plus you'll also get the slides from this deck. And there's up here is our email addresses. Now, with that said, let's
answer some questions.
Let's answer some questions, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've been answering them as we've been going along, but let's see. There's none in the Q&A function, but there was one that came in from Yvonne that said basically, what about measuring potentially negative impact of AI, like risks and unintended consequences of introducing AI, over-reliance on AI, cognitive overload on employees, loss of SMEness, maybe sameness over time, organization becoming dependent on AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are, some of the negative consequences are definitely there, but that would actually, you want to be very cautious about initiating that as an L&D professional versus asking that question when you're having the conversation with the business leader. How much are we actually, remember the 3-step model that we introduced to you? In that 3-step model, one of the things that you want to dig into is what if they didn't do this, or what if they actually did more of this than we actually intended? What would be the consequence of that? And so, Yvonne, that's an excellent question, and that's part of that sort of 3-step. As you're thinking about the solution in that second step, asking the question, if they take it too far, what might happen? And do we need to measure for that? Because you can have too much of a good thing. I know this because I eat a lot of potato chips. And that's all I'm going to say about this matter. And I need to stop that.
Or I have too many Boston Terriers. You can't just have one.
Yes, exactly.
That's it. The other thing too is that, we're very clear on the cognitive overload. And so that's where policies and procedures for HR are going to really impact, because people are also emotionally getting connected to their AI. I'm seeing it as a professor. I know Mike is that, in my students, the way my students communicate, that I'm now coaching my students less on, hey, cite your citations, stop plagiarizing, to check your stuff when you come out of generative AI. There's humans in the loop. Make sure that what you're saying has actual merit. One of the things that we use AI for, and I've coached others, is to use AI to check emails for tone. That's another part that works really effectively.
There was one question that we probably should spend a minute on, and we have to actually wrap up in about a minute or so. So the question came in, what AI is commonly used in the L&D world? And I think Richard offered a comment about using Notebook LM from Google and having great success with that. There are some great things you can do with Notebook LM. I'll start answering that, and Christina, I'll let you actually, because you've been playing in this space as well, and you've tried a lot of different models as well. The best way to think about most of the LLMs in the market are that they're different kinds of capabilities. So for instance, Anthropic's Claude has an ability to write better than anyone else. So some of the kinds of language output that you get from Claude is significantly better than what you would see in most other kinds of LLMs. When you're trying to do stuff with Microsoft products, and for instance, you need to actually build a pivot table, Copilot just outperforms all the others. So you should think of them as different tools in your tool belt. If you have to use one and you're limited to one, then that's your choice. You've only got one tool in your tool belt, and you have to work and make the most of it. But if you have the ability to have more than one tool in your tool belt, know some of the kinds of, there are lots of really amazing things you can do with different kinds of tools. And Adam added the love and hate Notebook LM. I am with you on that one. I've been able to do some amazing things with Notebook LM, and then I've turned around and gone, why did that happen? And it took me a long time until I started realizing that you could actually program Notebook LM to give its logic. And so before it actually moves into the next step, it actually explains why it's doing what it's doing. And you could argue with its logic and have it recalculate, recalibrate based on its logic. So that's been some of the things I've been doing. And yeah, the ability to build a podcast immediately is just amazing. But there are some things that got frustrating when I was like, why are you building? I said this, and I realized that some of the language is in here. So awesome. Anything you want to add, Christina, before we switch it back to the team?
So yeah, just one of the things is that, we talk about generative AI in general terms, but like Mike was just talking, just like you have an augmented enterprise and you have different synthetic employees where you have your ChatGPT, you can have your Anthropic Claude, you can have Grok. Each one of those has a different strength. And sometimes I found myself bouncing between them to get the best outcome, knowing that if I've generated all my outlines out of ChatGPT, I'm really happy with it, but I can place it into Claude and get a much smoother, much more human-based text. So knowing what your choices are. Also, again, I can't understand what your guardrails are, what your governance is, and also know that pitch that HR and L&D can utilize tools that others can't because you're not utilizing, if you're like in a healthcare organization, you're not doing HIPAA, you're not doing vulnerable populations, so you may be able to use different tools that others do not. With that,
Let's pass it over to Liz.
This was fabulous. I was enjoying the conversations, and honestly, I feel like I walked away with a lot. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yes. So for everyone else, I will just touch on a few other events that we have for this week and next, or really I should say for the later of April and all that good stuff. So I invite you to join us for more webinars, as well as you can register for these programs and watch past ones at trainingindustry.com. And all of our webinars and virtual events are pre-qualified for a credit hour by HRCI, SHRM, ISPI, and CPTM. So send me an email or anybody on the TI team, and we will give you those codes. If you're like, what is CPTM is, Liz? It is the Certified Professional and Training Management Program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. So you can find more at trainingindustry.com/training. And I would love to meet you all here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2025 Training Industry and Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections. You learn from each other. You address your most pressing learning challenges. So you can learn more at TICE2025.com. And lastly, that evaluation survey should have popped open in another tab in your browser, and we would appreciate hearing your feedback from today's session. With that, I will be adding the attachments that we had dropped in the chat in the follow-up email that you will receive either later today or early in the morning. So don't put that in the survey that you weren't able to get it, because you will get it, I promise. But I also want to give a big thank you to both of our amazing speakers today, as well as our amazing sponsor, ELB Learning. But lastly, I do thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope to see you next time. If not, please have a wonderful week, everybody.